a couple overviews for folks to take a look at once these have concluded. But so a background, I think a lot of folks are aware, but just to give you a little bit of a sense of how we got to today, or really how we got to launching EmPower a couple of years ago. We're all aware that there is an inequitable energy burden and access to clean energy, particularly in low-income homes. We also know that solar adoption lags for renters in minority communities. We know renters, low-income households, non-English speaking households are more likely to not utilize energy efficiency incentives or other incentives that are available. But we know that on a lot of different levels, both practically and morally, we need to bring everyone along on our clean energy future. Mass EC as an agency has had a lot of success running programs like Solarize and Heat Smart. Those are those community-based education and outreach initiatives. But us and like a lot of other groups that have been doing this work for a while found that there were still persistent barriers coming up: time, upfront costs, landlord-tenant split incentives, the fact that quite simply not all communities are well served by a volunteer-led model. But considering that communities, businesses, folks that are on the ground are really going to be key to coming up with the ideas and implementing the solutions, we knew that that needed to be a focus or a key of any program moving forward, and especially leveraging the relationships that exist within the communities or sort of between communities was really critical. So that's where you're going to sort of understand a little bit more about sort of how we design some of the parameters and focus areas of EmPower. So the broad goal of EmPower is to provide access to the benefits of clean energy for previously underserved populations in Massachusetts. When we say access to the benefits of clean energy, we are really trying to put this out in a holistic way. So that could mean a lot of different things. It could be solar on your roof, but it could also be access to shared solar, or maybe energy burden reduction by energy efficiency measures. So we'll kind of talk about that, and I'll kind of give you a sense of some of the projects that have come through on as to how folks are approaching it. But we definitely felt like there wasn't really just going to be one way to kind of to get at this. And so we think we're going to achieve this through investing directly in communities and community-based organizations or other partnerships of organizations, and really crowdsource these solutions for program models or projects to address this need. So like I said, we believe that solutions to clean energy access lie within the communities themselves. So with that, we basically have sort of like a three-pronged approach to this. We have a whole host of levels of support under the program, including participant workshops to really get folks together, engage, try to really leverage the networks, get folks together, share ideas, all that good stuff. And then on the financial side, we offer two stages of grants. We have our innovation and capacity building grants and our implementation grants. So innovation and capacity building, more for early stage ideas. I'll dig into that obviously in future slides. But those grants could range $5,000 to $25,000, or in some cases 50. And then implementation grants, which are more meant for then after you've explored your idea and you've built capacity, you can then implement that idea for your program model or project. And that would be $50,000 to $150,000, and in some cases, $300,000. And those are the priority tracks that we'll talk about that I know some folks are potentially interested in. But in a lot of ways, this was really trying to ensure we are addressing some of the gaps that were out there, in particular with capacity, knowing that sometimes you might just need like a grant to get a grant, if that makes sense. So just sometimes you need a little bit of money for staff time to go ahead and apply for that grant. So that's kind of why we have the multi-stages there. So digging in a little bit further, what's the difference between each grant? So our innovation and capacity building, this is new and innovative idea for a program model or project that you're exploring that needs discovery or refinement. So in a lot of ways, you could view this as a seed funding grant towards a future program model or project, either with EmPower or maybe somewhere else, like maybe a federal grant, something like that. And sometimes it doesn't also need to be particularly new or innovative, but just something that needs to be sort of prepped, maybe capacity build, maybe a little bit of staff time or stakeholder engagement kind of ahead of something. And then the implementation grant is really going to be those program models or projects that are pretty complete in terms of design, partners, and really just ready to go. You just really need the funding to make it happen. It's not to preclude that you might still have a lot of the pieces, but right now we're maybe still trying to seek a partner or something like that. But that's kind of the main difference between those. And, you know, one thing that can come up is if you need to do some outreach, you know, maybe as an initial phase of your project, that's certainly something that could come under an implementation grant, but it really shouldn't be something that is meant to sort of inform what a project could be. And so sort of building off that, one point of clarity is that there's some questions kind of around, well, can I apply for like innovation and capacity building and implementation? And the answer is both yes and no. So if you want to do innovation because you've got an idea and it's not quite ready, that's great. But you also have another idea that is sort of fully baked and ready, and you have the capacity to kind of do those separately, then that's great. So if it's a different idea or a different project, you can definitely apply for the different levels, but definitely not for the same idea, because again, the idea on the implementation is you're largely ready to go. So you don't really necessarily need that sort of front loading. And I don't think this necessarily impacts many folks on here, but just sort of thinking forward that if you do go ahead and proceed with this, you can consider that you can continue to apply to grants for either new ideas or potentially follow-on funding for successful ideas as well. So sort of circling back a little bit to access of the benefits of clean energy. Again, we really want to just approach this holistically. So we won't necessarily go through all of the potential options, but just want to get folks thinking that, again, it doesn't have to be necessarily just that technology installed, but you can think about insulation as a means for enhancing quality of life, for soundproofing. Well-designed sustainable lighting could both sort of reduce energy, but enhance a neighborhood and increase quality of life. Or consider that heat pumps, of course, also offer cooling. So those are a little bit more of like the left field kind of ideas than the traditional, but just kind of wanted to get folks thinking that there's a lot of different potential options of the ways that we view it. And so we want to hear from folks on what they think could be a good idea and could really benefit underserved populations. So when I talk about underserved populations, we do very specifically define it for eligibility for the program in terms of who you're intending to sort of benefit or serve. And so we do term priority groups in the RFP. So I definitely take a look at that. It's largely what's defined here, but we go into a little bit more depth. But this is broadly environmental justice populations. That's defined by Massachusetts EEA, Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Policy. This also does include renters, because we think that's something that really needs a lot of focus. And also any communities disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards, such as air quality or heat. So in some ways it's narrow, but in some ways it's also pretty broad. And we also want folks to reach out to us and say, well, I really think that this particular group is also underserved and needs this type of support, and I think we can do it this way. And so we always want to engage in these conversations with folks. So if you're not quite sure, reach out to us and we'll have a chat about it either now or down the line, or, you know, if you hear of anyone else that has that question, definitely encourage them to reach out to us so we can kind of talk that through. So obviously, there's also eligibility around applicants. Target applicants, of course, are you and really anyone that is interested in doing this work. We are certainly especially looking for community-based organizations that have that demonstrated history of working with the priority populations, because, again, we believe that that's truly critical, both from a success and a trust standpoint. And just to sort of outline how the eligibility works. So in terms of the program itself, nonprofits, individuals, and individuals with the demonstrated history with the populations, that is, and community-based organizations all can apply without the requirements of a partner. Anyone and everyone else is also encouraged to apply. So that's municipalities, maybe for-profit organizations like maybe a clean energy installer or implementer, or a financial institution, because we know those can all be really key partners in programs or projects. But the latter do need to partner with a community-based organization, because, again, we need to, you know, ensure that we see that there's going to be that level of success and understanding of like what the needs of those populations are. And again, you know, bringing in that trust and also really monetizing the value and the asset that community-based organizations and those populations bring to the table. There's a lot of flexibility around it too, in the sense of unique situations. So if folks have questions on that, we can also dig in again now and in the future. But that's kind of the baseline of how that works. Again, detailed further in the RFP as well. So just to kind of reiterate and maybe put it in some different words, do I need a partner? If you can say that you are in a group with a demonstrated history of working with our priority groups, then it's likely you need a partner, in particular a community organization. Nonprofits and individuals are eligible without a partner, but you should consider one if the statement above applies. A CBO or somebody with a strong history could also be potentially for profit. So we'll just talk about that, but likely that could be a good way to meet the eligibility criteria, even though you might be a for-profit entity. But I guess what we're trying to hit home is if you have questions or you're not quite sure, talk with us and we'll kind of talk through the situation. So to dig in a little further and give you both a little bit more information on each type of grant, but also some previous examples, innovation and capacity building funds could be used for staff time, like towards program or concept development, refinement, things like technical studies, costs for a grant writer, accountant, lawyer, or other professional services to really move a project forward. And certainly costs associated with ongoing community engagement, including, direct pass-through stipends to folks that are participating with you. We really do encourage that. And I sort of highlighted this before, but these are certainly can be used as bridges towards other programs. Maybe you want to supplement your participation in Community First Partnership Program, or maybe you want to, we had somebody do this last round, maybe use some funds to hire a grant writer to go for like an EPA grant. We really encourage that because we know we don't have the deepest pockets, but we want to help bridge that gap to increase that access. And also this type of grant is designed to be used relatively quickly as well. And we do expect projects and funds to be utilized within 3 years on this particular grant. So some examples. So for folks that haven't visited the website yet, I'm guessing you probably have if you're here, but we have a great story map that has now all of our 80 kind of plus awardees on there. You can click on each one, learn who they are, who their partners are. You can actually see their application, and you can also see their project description. These are a few examples that I wanted to pull out as some good examples of from our first round of the innovation and capacity building. So we had the partnership of Browning the Green Space and I guess it's Franklin Cummings Tech now. I know they've renamed, but they wanted to do a capacity building grant to do student outreach and engagement and professional development to help folks learn about their new renewable technology associates degree. And so they did a great job of kind of hosting events and trying to really engage students in learning more about that. So that was just an early stage capacity building to really get folks into that particular degree and just learn a little bit more about how to do that. Another one was Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation, partnered with the West of Washington Coalition. So it's a great sort of neighborhood partnership plus a community organization to try to expand their energy ambassador program. So basically a lot of the funding for this particular grant is going to West of Washington to help do pass-through stipends to who they're finding as energy ambassadors, which are folks in their own neighborhoods, really trying to help engage and educate their friends and neighbors about clean energy, and also, conversely bring challenges and other things kind of back to the various entities to help kind of improve the processes overall. So 2 good examples of ways to use the funding. Of course, there's plenty more, and definitely check it out on the story map. But from here, I'll move into the implementation grants. This was largely confirmed before, but again, just kind of hit home. It's really program models or projects that are kind of ready to go. So the applications are presenting clear metrics for goals and outcomes.
I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
getting an emergency alert. There's a tornado warning in the area.
Oh.
It says to take shelter now in a basement. I don't know where you are. I'm
in
outside.
Boston. Where are you?
I'm in Metro West area. So
okay.
I think I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
What town are you in? What town are you in?
Wayland.
I'm in Medfield. I just got the same thing.
Okay, good. Well, I'll see you in the basement then. I'm so sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, no, please do. Go ahead. Well, we're recording it. So I hope that anyone that gets that alert should feel free to do that. I think we'll probably just keep going, but please keep in touch with us, folks, but don't don't feel you have to come back if you can't. But we're going to record this, and hopefully that will pass quickly, and we'll have an opportunity to hear from you all on that. I will say I've also gotten those alerts on my phone before, and they're very terrifying. So we'll see that hopefully that line of storms doesn't affect anyone too negatively. So to continue on with our implementation grant, like I said, these are projects that are ready to go. One thing to clarify as well is that out of the program budget, so not necessarily a broader budget, but just the budget under EmPower, there is a 25% cap on capital costs, things like clean energy installation, so maybe money towards heat pumps or money towards solar PV installation. So out of like $150,000 grant, that would be $37,500. Or if, let's say, you needed something on the smaller end and it was like a $50,000 grant, I think you could probably do up to $12,500. So we, again, wanted to sort of both acknowledge that we wouldn't really have enough money to just continue to fund just capital, because we know how quickly that goes. But also the fact that a lot of times having that blend of both some supportive capital costs, but also money towards staff time and other things actually can produce really beneficial projects and learnings. And these particular funds are designed to be a little bit longer, especially if it's like sort of like a larger education and outreach program, and are used more along the lines of about 3 years. Boy, I do see Ina back. Maybe everything's okay. Ina, we see you back. Is everything all right?
So I just keep looking at the weather map here, moving weather map.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, I'm a little dark here.
Here in Medfield does not look like clearing is what's going to be happening.
Okay.
Well, continue to be safe and keep us posted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I appreciate your persistence in being on with us.
Well, you know, it keeps my mind off a tornado.
Well, you didn't miss much. We really just were talking. The one thing to flag, Ina, is that there is a 25% cap on capital costs on the implementation side. So just something to keep in mind when folks are designing their budgets. And I'm going to dive into a few actual examples, and these are going to be really good ties into the priority tracks. I know some folks are interested in that, and that's a new feature of the program this year. So the first one I wanted to call out is also one of our first grantees. I'm largely picking ones from the first round because a lot of them are also a little bit further along. But this is a project that's it's an implementation project. It's a partnership of MACDC, which is a Mass Association of Community Development Corporations, LISC Boston, and Resonant Energy. And sort of it's a three-pronged partnership that pairs a level of program administration, technical analysis, and financial analysis, and the connection, the community organization kind of connection to those CDCs. And so they are running a solar technical assistance retrofit program, or STAR, which is much easier to say, which basically is looking to help CDCs if they want to sign up and get to participate in the program. They get a grant for their staff time. They get technical and solar analyses of their portfolios, their housing portfolios. And then they also get support in finding pathways towards actually then implementing that solar if it is found to be feasible. So financial models, access to other types of maybe grants or incentives or kind of whatever's out there. So it's a really great sort of pre-baked package where they're really helping not only get folks engaged in it, but also sort of get them to that final step. So this is an example of what we would call like a technical assistance model. And that'll come in handy when we talk about those priority tracks.
Can I just ask, please, just quickly,
Sure.
Is it geographic based? And maybe I missed that.
This one?
Yeah.
It is all across Massachusetts because it's CDCs anywhere in Massachusetts.
TDC's anywhere. Thank you.
Yep.
I see the little map there, but that's
oh yeah, that was just a little screen snip, a little zoom out there.
Got it. And can I just ask a related question? So is there a particular outreach or effort for EJ communities in something like this?
Well, so something like this, the tie-in here and why, let's say they're eligible or the work they're doing is eligible, is because all of these are affordable housing portfolios. So they meet
Got
the
it.
criteria, EJ low income, basically.
Thank you.
Yep. Good question. Thank you. And so this next example, again, another one from our first round, and actually both of these have done follow-on funding as well because they've been pretty successful in their work. This is a partnership, actually. Well, it's a fiscal agent and a community organization. So that's one thing that folks can sort of be encouraged about under the program is if you, let's say, are a smaller organization that can't maybe take in funds, you could apply through a fiscal agent. That's a great opportunity to kind of get access to funding like this. So Cooler Communities is working in Springfield, West Springfield, and Pittsfield, and is co-participating in the Mass Save Community First program. They're using our funding largely to sort of enhance the program in terms of they're making their dollars go a little further. But what they're also doing is putting a lot of the funds towards making the energy advocate position for Mass Save a full-time position. Because under that program, it's not a full-time position. And we thought that this would be, or, folks have felt that this is a good opportunity to really make that a more in-depth, meaningful, and potentially long-term position. And so, this is a great example of what we would call sort of our energy advocate, energy coaching track, where folks are really, paying meaningful money to these energy coaches, to do this work. So again, that's something I'll dig into a little bit when we talk about those priority tracks. So to elaborate a bit on that, I've been alluding to that for a little while, but I strongly encourage folks to look at the RFP just so you can see all of the details about it. But one of our broader goals with the program is that we know that just one-off projects need to happen. Funding needs to get out there. We want to build staff, capacity, all that good stuff, do outreach. But we also want to, find to some extent program models or projects that are also potentially scalable. And so we've been sort of tracking kind of what's maybe consistently coming through or is maybe consistently being successful, or maybe just even types of models that we just find something unique about and think might be better to kind of look a little bit more in depth into. And so what we've come up with now that we're in our third year is that we're seeing a lot of asks for energy coach / ambassador track and technical assistance provider. So energy coach and ambassador. So we do define energy coach in one way that's more of sort of more of like a full-time single coach that might be maybe with a community that's really doing like a lot of in-depth work with like a really specific program, again, like the Cooler Communities example. And then the ambassador, again, these are all just terms, but is the idea that it could be sort of one singular position, or it could be more of this sort of diffuse social networking approach of the ambassador, where it might be a program that's training 20 ambassadors to sort of go out and spread the word, talk to their friends and neighbors and things like that. So that's one track. The technical assistance provider track is a lot like what I said with that LISC STAR program. So that here we're looking for replicable technical assistance models that are serving community-based organizations, and we do define what that is in the RFP as well. By adopting a standardized approach or framework for providing that technical assistance, such as maybe assessments, feasibility studies, legal support, grant writing, financial or business analysis, etc. So just various types of technical assistance that might help organizations move forward with their goals, and again, reach those goals of helping the underserved populations that we have defined in the RFP. So a little bit more about each of these. So I had mentioned before that these could be up to 300,000. So these priority tracks specifically, folks can either just apply for the traditional amount of money, or they could consider applying for up to 300,000, but they do need to meet specific guidelines. So we do detail these in the RFP, but for the energy coach ambassador model, programs must operate for 2 years. Energy coaches must be a representative of the priority group served or have at least 2 years of successful experience working with priority group populations. Energy ambassadors, so that's that sort of smaller diffuse, must be a member of the priority group served. So they've really got to be within that community and have that community trust. So further on the energy coach ambassador model, program proposal and design must also reasonably demonstrate that the coaches or ambassadors are being appropriately compensated for their time, and providing a potential pathway to grow professionally. These aren't as stringent, but this is sort of a list of things that folks should potentially consider, or have a sort of a reasonable explanation as to kind of how you landed on how you are compensating these folks. But some of the things we're suggesting folks consider that the energy coach can be a full-time position, potentially offer them career development, or provide Mass CEC an explanation of how these compensation levels were determined and why you believe that they're appropriate, offer benefits or other reasonable compensation. And then on the energy ambassador side, reasonable compensation for their work, including training time and outreach, planning, and conversations. So a lot of those might be, how did you land on the fact that it's $1,000 stipend? Is it because it's 5 hours times 20? That my math is way off on that, but I think you get the idea of just trying to help us understand how that breakout works to see if it really is a reasonable stipend for their time. And then demonstration that energy coaches or ambassadors will receive appropriate training, and will prioritize applications where they do receive training across a suite of clean energy solutions. So we do ask that applicants agree to share a detailed program plan with us. Campaigns can support just one solution, but again, we might prioritize ones that address a suite of solutions if that's possible. Wanted to confirm that this is like another example where co-participation in another program can certainly be an eligible approach. But again, with Community First, we might just want to see promotion of energy efficiency, like maybe plus education around solar, just to, again, kind of expand over time. So on the technical assistance provider track, technical assistance needs to be offered basically to those that need it. So it could be community-based organizations, individual members of priority groups, or federally recognized or state acknowledged tribes and or municipalities. Technical assistance must aim to support multiple recipients. The suggested range, again, we're sort of theorizing on this based on what we've seen, could maybe be 5 to 15 recipients. If appropriate, the technical assistance could be offered over a period of time, maybe 2 to 3 years. Applicant doesn't necessarily need to have the capacity to provide technical assistance to the entire group at once, though. So it can be sort of, we support kind of one team or project at a time. And ideally, technical assistance should provide clear pathways, including an implementation strategy towards accessing clean energy or reducing energy burden. So it's providing the feasibility study, but maybe not just leaving it there, and really trying to maybe also bring a partner along that can offer maybe support to access financing to help folks kind of get to that next step. And again, that's why I brought up that STAR example, because the resident energy partner in that particular scenario not only provided the technical and solar studies, but they also had access to financial models and helping them gain access to financing as well to really get the implementation actually in there for the solar. So that's why I did share that specific example. Couple of other guidelines for this track. The lead applicant should have experience or include partners covering the following roles. And again, that's why I really shared that first example, because it showed that sort of multi-pronged approach. Clean energy technology or engineering, project or program management experience, the demonstrated history of working with the groups, and or implementation expertise. We also do recommend that meaningful stipends to participants are provided, because a lot of them, sometimes they just can't do these things because they don't have the time to gather the data or attend the meetings or things like that. So we want to make sure that that is a meaningful part of the program as well. So maybe I'll pause there. I did throw a lot out. I know there's kind of a lot of details and some folks were interested in those tracks. So maybe before I continue, I want to see if anyone has any questions on that. If it's specific to your project, we'll dig into that later. But if you have any general questions on that, what I've laid out so far, please feel free to jump in. All right, wonderful. So just to kind of put a little scope to sort of the broader view of the program, we did launch it in FY22, where we made 32 awards. Last year we made 50 awards, so it is a growing program. folks who are potentially joining a cohort now of 80 plus grantees, although of course some projects are now starting to wrap. We're seeing a lot of different things that awardees are doing. It really runs across technologies, across Massachusetts, as you can see with our story map here. We've got teams co-participating in Community First. We've got feasibility studies. We've kind of got really a lot of things going on with this. And so I really do, if you haven't looked at that, the story map on the website, I definitely encourage you to take a look. It may take a little time, but just to help folks understand that we really are trying to support a wide variety of approaches here. And another thing to kind of point out is some of the things that we also try to do alongside the program is we host cohort calls, and that's something that we really try to again harness sort of the power of sharing ideas, of the networking, and things like that. And so we gather everyone together. It's sort of, the time frame has varied, but we actually just had a few earlier this week where we get folks together, they share project updates, make connections, and a lot just like this, and also the office hours, folks are coming up with new ideas and partnerships. And so that's something that does take time and effort, but we think it's a really strong value add to the program. And we think that there's a really great network being built here. And so that's, really one of our goals with this as well. And we also do engage in storytelling. We're writing blogs, doing social media posts, and just trying to find ways to help folks get their project stories out there. Things that we've learned, this is super high level, but a few things to kind of point out. When hiring, a lot more time and budget, and probably more than you think you need. Networking and collaboration is extremely important. Partnerships are essential. And with partnerships, those do come with the need for time and resources to coordinate your partners. So folks that come in with a robust set of partners should also plan around that. It could take time and effort to coordinate them. And so that's something that funding can be sort of set aside and spent on as well. Community-based organizations are great partners, but still do need a lot of support. So especially helping them gain access to planning grants to supplement their work is really important. And as always, education and training. There's always a need for that, and it's super important. Probably most things that you've probably heard of before, but we just sort of have liked to hit home because those are pretty common themes. If anyone is interested in working with the low income energy efficiency related programs like the CAP agencies, the LEAN program, Brian Beote from Action has provided his contact information because he really likes to meet folks that want to engage in that work. So if anyone is interested in that, Brian's contact information is there, and we'll certainly share this information via the slides after as well. And once we post these videos, you'll be able to see this again. So a few things to just flag that you don't have to take this all down now. It's going to be in the slides, but there's really a lot more sort of related programming coming up. And so some of the things we like to do generally is just let folks know what else is out there, or help folks find a good or better fit depending on kind of what their needs are for the program. So Mass EC hosts a lot of different equity related programs, but we also are trying to little by little learn more about kind of what's coming out of DOE and EPA. And so those are things that we really will also aim to keep folks in the loop about, whether it's a grantee and we're sending emails, or maybe it's in our Slack channel or on our website. So those are things that we're really going to try to focus in and engage with as well. So for a few technical details on the program, if you haven't seen it already on the RFP, the innovation and capacity building grants are on a rolling basis. So that basically means you can apply whenever, and we will reserve 6 to 8 weeks to give you notice on your award status. So folks, again, can apply anytime to those, although we also do have some sort of mini priority group deadlines where if you align with a certain group, we'll also aim to review those a little bit more quickly as well. The implementation is similar to last year. We have 2 deadlines. We have a fall and a spring deadline. So the first one upcoming is October 18th. The one in the spring is April 4th. Ahead of the spring one, we'll also host some more participant workshops to get folks together. But I guess maybe one thing to sort of put out there about these deadlines is when you're thinking about your approach and the money that you might need and all that, be mindful of the fact that as much as we'd like to operate as quickly as possible, we are a government agency with a lot of contracting needs and other things that we need to meet. And so stuff does take a bit of time. So October 18th, what that means practically is that's probably a notification of award in December. And that means contracting starting from then on. And that takes on average about 2 months, which again is really painful to say, but it's kind of the reality. So when you're thinking about when your program might launch or when you're getting your first sets of funds, it's going to be a little bit further down the line. Again, that's not everyone's favorite thing to hear, but just to make sure that folks are aware of kind of how the timeline of these grant programs kind of work. But that's also why we did try to also make the capacity building rolling, so you didn't always have to like wait as long to kind of get notice for things, especially if you really just want to start exploring with a little bit of funding. So one thing that we also offer and really encourage folks to do is fill out a draft application. It's a really helpful opportunity to help figure if you're meeting all your eligibility parameters, you're on the right track. We might review your idea and flag some potential ideas to look at or partners to maybe get engaged with, and also just help you ensure that, okay, you applied for implementation, looks like you're in the right spot, you know, proceed with doing this, and we just fill out a little form for you and give you that feedback. And so ahead of the October deadline, is actually coming up pretty soon, September 20th. So folks submit it to us by September 20th. We'll return it by October 4th. And then we also have a similar deadline in the spring as well. If folks don't exactly hit the 21st and you submit it a little bit later than that, we probably still get to it. But just know that the turnaround might be a little bit beyond October 4th. So that's just why we're trying to structure it that way. But there's always a great opportunity to engage in depth in these sessions and office hours as well. And I see a question here about getting a copy of the presentation. Yep, we'll send that out, and we'll also, we're recording the video, so you get to see that as well. And we'll post that probably by the end of this week. Great question. And actually also, let me see where I am with actually we're almost done, and then I do want to have time for maybe one more introduction because I see a new name on our list here. But just to put it out there, we have a series of more office hours. Pardon me, I've been talking for a while. And we always host those once or twice a week, really up and through the deadline. If you can't make that time, feel free to suggest another one to us, or we'll set up a one-on-one session. But the office hours are great opportunities to kind of network with folks. So that's another level of support we offer to really just try and help ensure folks are on the right track. So largely, I think I've covered everything that we really try to offer. Lots of touch points. We also have information on our website. We will also happily facilitate introductions. And folks can also join our Slack channel. It's not super duper active, but we do post especially information on deadlines and upcoming grant opportunities and things like that. But folks can use it any way they see fit and can try to engage with folks. So lots of options out there as well.